Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to share with you my two UVA supplemental essay prompts that I submitted to UVA and ultimately was accepted to. So this first essay prompt is: what work of art, music, science, mathematics, or literature has surprised, unsettled, or challenged you, and in what way? I think this was a really good essay prompt. I really liked it. I've edited a lot of students who've written this essay prompt, and I've kind of given a lot of feedback, which was that they weren't really answering the prompt that was given. The prompt is like a work of art, music, science, mathematics, literature. It might be like, you know, trying to recreate Beethoven's Fifth Symphony on the piano, or, like looking at a piece of art in the museum that really inspired, or this research paper in mathematics, or a book that they really liked. And so these works of art, music, science, or math or literature has to do something to you. It has to unsettle you, challenge you, or surprise you. And those are three very specific verbs. You want to make sure that it falls into one or multiple of those categories and explain how it did that. And I think that was a really good prompt, just because it's something that's very specific. It's something that's asking you about your introspection with things that you're encountering, and they just want to know that, are you introspective enough to be able to see something and not just be a passive consumer of it, but to have some thoughts about it and to explain what those thoughts are. So I'll just get started. I'm going to read this out loud. So, for an upcoming national debate tournament in my sophomore year, I wanted to craft a creative foreign policy position somehow related to John Locke's philosophy on empiricism. Consequently, I began reading an essay concerning human understanding and immediately grew uncomfortable with his absolute assertion that at birth, our minds were blank slates that could only acquire moral principles through experience. Locke's assertion that it was always possible to counter any claim with a rebuttal meant that internally felt universal rules could not exist. His metaphysical philosophy, if valid, suggested to me that identity is meaningless. If so-called free will were guided by parenting and environment rather than soul or existence, it would mean that any moral action I took, make myself out of the way. I'm just going to repeat. If so-called free will were guided by parenting and environment rather than soul or existence, it would mean that any moral action I took could always be attributed to something external and arbitrary rather than something intrinsic to me. Were terrorists and moral bankrupts separated from me only by my upbringing? Was something as random as the family I was born into or the friends I made the only reason I am the person that I am today? These thoughts didn't just unsettle me. So look at the unsettle me. They scared me. So you can see the two verbs right there. Unsettle and scared. What was the point of my life if my identity were not entirely controlled by myself? Beyond prompting disturbing introspection, Locke's book affected me in three other ways. First, it hooked me into philosophy, less out of interest than out of hope for discovering solid counterarguments. I began reading philosophy books on epistemology by authors such as David Hume and Immanuel Kant. Second, I learned that I should be more open-minded, because if Locke's philosophy was true, then I could never really judge others for holding different beliefs. And third, I found out that defending positions with which I was uncomfortable with made me a better debater and a more well-rounded advocate. Okay, so that was my essay. I can explain a little bit, because I think upon first reading it's a little difficult to grab all the things that I was trying to say. But basically, I'm mentioning that I read this dude, John Locke, and I read an essay concerning human understanding. It's actually something we talked a lot about in our English and history classes. And in this book, he mentions that at birth, we were blank slates. Our minds were blank slates. So we weren't born with anything. We were just blank slates. And in our upbringing, we were taught these principles by our parents or our friends or an environment. And that was the only reason we are who we are. And because we are blank slates, I thought the logical conclusion was that, there's no soul. That the decisions I made was kind of a result of just my upbringing, because I was a blank slate at birth, and not a result of any sort of intrinsic factor to me. There was nothing intrinsic to me. And so There was nothing different between me and a terrorist or me and somebody who's morally bankrupt, um, besides the fact that I had a different upbringing than them. And so this was sort of scary to me because I realized that identity might be meaningless. That, what's the point of identity if I'm not in control of it? If it's just dictated by things that happened in my childhood or things that are happening right now. And so that was kind of the thing that was scaring me. And I very clearly answered the prompt by said, this didn't just unsettle me, which is unsettled, but it also scared me. And um, that's very important that you have a sentence that kind of says which verb it's doing to you. But it's not just ending at a depressive note, but it's also sharing more about me. So I tried to include something about, that uh, I got affected in three other ways. The first one is that I got more interested in philosophy because I started wanting to look for counter arguments. And so I read more philosophy books and kind of helped me grow as a debater. The second is I learned I should be more open-minded because if his philosophy was true, then I can't really judge other people for making the decisions that they do or that the beliefs that they hold because that's all determined by, their upbringing. So I realized that I have to be less judgmental. And the third is that I became a better debater and a more well-rounded advocate. Because I realized that, I was actually defending this guy's philosophy in a debate round, even though it made me so uncomfortable. And so by defending it, I became a better debater and more well-rounded advocate. All right, that's this essay. I hope it was helpful. I think if you have two takeaways from this whole spiel, it should be that just remember that when they're asking for a work of art, music, science, mathematics, or literature, it should be like something that you're actually seeing or something that's affected you. I've seen people who write about like their math problem that they got from school and how that affected them, and it wasn't really what they're asking. They're asking like, oh, is there a work of art or music or science or math or literature that's really affected you that you've encountered and how that's affected you? And you also want to make sure that it's answering this question surprised, unsettled, or challenged. All right, next question is it was a free response question, and I'm glad that they have the prompt here. And the prompt is, we are a community of quirks, both in language and tradition. Describe your quirks and why it is a part of who you are. So this essay prompt is asking about quirks, which is like a weird feature that you have. And so it could be language or it could be tradition. And so they want you to explain your quirk. So I kind of liked, I started dancing when I was pretty little. And so I wanted to talk about how I had these quirks that were related to dancing, just like freestyling whenever I was walking around. So I'll read it out loud. I tap my feet to the rhythm of Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal, do the slow motion robot while talking to friends, and finger tut while sitting down. My love for dancing leaves me constantly choreographing moves in my head and playing them out everywhere from morning bus rides to school hallways. My passion first began when I was 6 and my family frequently watched Bollywood movies. Whenever a song started, I sprang from my couch and performed my own spontaneous dance. This is true, actually. I used to love doing this. At Indian wedding ceremonies, I would dance in front of hundreds of people. Nowadays, choreographing moves in public places may encourage my friends to poke fun at how my flailing arms resemble those of a constipated monkey, but my love for dance has paid noticeable dividends. This proclivity not only has made me an accomplished dancer, but has given me the confidence to talk and perform among others. Meticulously controlling my facial expressions and body movements while dancing helped me build a posture that projects self-assurance and poise. Furthermore, challenging myself to generate moves to vastly different music genres from hip hop to dubstep exposed me to myriad artists, lyrics, and worldviews. I also find that obsessively listening to music sharpened my listening skills in general, enhancing my awareness of detail. Entering high school, I did not anticipate the strenuous lifestyle that half-long commutes and rigorous homework would represent, but dancing daily to my own choreography gave me both exercise and a much-needed escape from the pressures of school or family matters. I just let the rhythm guide me and my energy flow. I hope to put this quirk to good use at UVA by joining University Dance Club and participating in non-performing sessions every semester, thus improving my technique in the company of other talented dancers. All right. So this was basically an essay in which I was trying to explain that I have these weird little habits related to how I like to dance, and that was kind of like, like doing little dance moves when I was talking to people, or doing things in public that other people wouldn't do. And it was kind of related to my proclivity to dance. And the goal here was just kind of to explain how that's affected me. And this was also something that, nobody would have known about unless I mentioned it in this essay. So that's also always a good place to include things, these narratives about yourself is, not everything has to be an academic essay. You can also include things like, you like to dance, you like to sing, you like to talk to your brother or sister, or you like to read books. All of these things are things that are part of who you are. And so if you include that in your essays, it's always fine to include those. And as long as you're showing how that's helped you grow and how that's helped you become a better person, or what you've learned from it, or what's the growth story as a result of that. Whew. All right, that was a doozy. I hope you really enjoyed that video. I hope you learned something. I hope you have a good time writing your essay. Wish you all the best. Hope you learned something. I said that already. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.